ADCS was a San Diego company, and so Stern, based in Washington, handed the lead to the Union Tribune and reporter Dean Calbreth. For Calbreth, figuring out what ADCS did was easy. Founded in the mid-1990s, ADCS converted old paper documents into digital ones. But what did that have to do with Duke Cunningham? To find out, Calbreth would have to probe further, starting with the company's owner, a man named Brent Wilkes.
Brent Wilkes was a guy who was very high profile without anybody knowing much about him. He was very active in the local Republican Party. He was very active with some local charities. And yet, there had been very few newspaper articles that even mentioned him.
To unravel the Wilkes story, Calbreth set out to penetrate his inner circle. One source told him that Wilkes had stayed close to old high school friends from nearby Chula Vista.
So I hopped in my car, drove down to Chula Vista, about a 15-minute drive from the newspaper office, to Hilltop High. And that's Brent Wilkes. I thumbed through the yearbooks from 1970, 71, and 72, trying to find the names of friends of his, people who had been on the football team with him, people who had been in social clubs with him. I took down any easily recognizable male name, anything that where I could Google them and try and track down their addresses, emails, telephone numbers, whatever I could do to contact them and to say, hey, did you know Brent Wilkes?
Calbreth's tactics paid off. He found a handful of old buddies who told the reporter that as far back as the 1980s, Wilkes bragged over poker games of being a Washington operator, of using booze, fancy meals, and women to get close to powerful congressmen. The reporters continued to trace the career of Brent Wilkes forward into the 1990s. By now, the reporters were deep into the pervasive use of congressional earmarks to repay political debts. They realized that Duke Cunningham had been just the crooked tip of the iceberg. Over the course of the next 6 months, Calbreth and Kammer sifted through thousands of pages of campaign finance disclosure forms, lobbying disclosure forms, and appropriations bills, tracking who Wilkes was donating money to and what contracts ADCS and his other firms were receiving from the government.
It was the way you feel when you're head over heels in love. You just think about the girl, you just want to be with the girl, and it consumes your every waking thought, and you dream about it.
You couldn't go to bed at night because you knew that there was something that you had missed. You knew that there was some political contribution that you had missed, some lobbying record, some earmark that was out there.
You feel driven to understand what's going on here. How are they using this power? What are the connections?
After my wife fell asleep, after I put the kids to bed, I would go to the computer, start working at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, keep working until 2 or 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. And Jerry in Washington, D.C., he might get up at 3 or 4 in the morning and start emailing me, which would be midnight, 1 o'clock my time.
According to Dean Calbreth, between 1995 and 2005, Wilkes and those close to him gave at least $700,000 in political donations to Duke Cunningham and other powerful legislators.
We collected the donations that had been given to legislators by the employees of ADCS, Brent Wilkes, his wife, his brothers, his nephews, his nieces. He was giving money to everyone across the board.
Brent Wilkes learned how the game works in Washington, and he became a very energetic and aggressive practitioner of the game of getting the attention of members of Congress by giving them money.
But prosecutors would later prove that Wilkes broke the rules of that game, that beyond his campaign contributions, he gave over $600,000 worth of bribes to Duke Cunningham. The reporters learned that as Wilkes was busy giving money to politicians, he was getting government contracts, more than $80 million worth over an 8-year period. Nearly all of them were the product of congressional earmarks. Earmarks, the reporters learned, that were often pushed on reluctant federal agencies.
Cunningham and a couple of other congressmen who had also benefited from Brent Wilkes' contributions were pushing the Pentagon to buy material that they really didn't want, material that ended up in warehouses.
Too often, it seems, we have government of the lobbyist buy the earmarks for the campaign cash. That's not what Mr. Lincoln and our founding fathers had in mind. It's a real cheapening and a real subversion, it seems to me, of what we hold up as our ideal.
Randall Duke Cunningham, the former Navy fighter ace, the former U.S. Congressman, is serving an 8-year, 4-month sentence in federal prison. He pleaded guilty to charges including bribery of a public official and accepting bribes.
For all of this, I am deeply sorry. The truth is I broke the law, concealed my conduct, and disgraced my office. I know that I will forfeit my freedom, my reputation, my worldly possessions, most importantly, the trust of my friends and family.
This really is not about one man's sordid misadventures. This is a far more important story. This is about the need to be vigilant in protecting our government, protecting our country.